Good afternoon. Welcome to episode 37 of Duval Rundown. My name is Gus Logue. I'm joined by Hacker right now. Mia will be coming on later after she stops by the locker room. We might have Tommy McManus join as well. But right now, Hacker and I are going to break down what we just saw from Jacksonville's 23-20 Week 13 loss to the Houston Texans. It was a close game, technically. It was a close loss, but really it felt like the game was over in the second quarter when Trevor Lawrence sustained a brutal, ugly, evil late hit from number 0 on the Texans. It was a late hit, very unnecessary, something that definitely requires a suspension, if let alone a fine. And so right after the hit, you saw pretty much everyone on Jacksonville's bench fly out and defend their quarterback. And so I guess that was good to see, or encouraging to see, just that they have 16s back. But obviously it was not encouraging at all to see Trevor Lawrence go down with that ugly, ugly hit. And then he was ruled out of the game with a concussion. We haven't heard anything about him like being transferred to a hospital or anything like that. So I don't think it was maybe as bad as it looked, knock on wood. But definitely we're going to keep thinking about Trevor and hopefully he's okay. So Hacker, just starting with the Trevor injury, what was flying through your head in that point of time?
Oh, it was a disgrace. I mean, that's a disgraceful thing for Al-Shaair to do. And apparently, like going back through the memory banks and the Twitterverse, he did basically something somewhat similar to Caleb Williams on Sunday Night Football in Week 2, a really late hit out of bounds. He
Yeah.
needs to be suspended, and he needs to be suspended for as many games as Trevor Lawrence misses due to this injury. By the way, the NFL, Gus, has got to do something too. Offsetting penalties? Are you kidding me? I mean, I know they kick him out of the game, but wait a minute. So you can do a forearm smash to a sliding quarterback's face, uh, just ridiculous, and then your teammates defend the quarterback, and it's offsetting personal fouls. The NFL needs to do something about that. Even the Texan players, if you go back and look at their reaction, D'Amico Ryans as well, I think they were pretty disgusted at what that guy did. That was a dirty, disgraceful thing. The guy should be ashamed of himself, and he should be suspended for a long time.
Yeah, it was about 8 minutes of not just completely brawling, but 8 minutes of just inaction in the NFL game, which 8 minutes doesn't sound like a lot, but it felt like an entire lifetime sitting there up in the press box. Really, I'm sure anyone who was watching the game live, whether you were at the stadium or at home, just a surreal moment, and definitely one of the most surreal moments I can remember, not just covering the Jaguars, let alone watching sports or just watching any life experience. It was absurd.
One of those things, Gus, and you kind of brought it up having Trevor's back. I think the bigger story would have been had nothing happened. And I
Right.
think one of the stories coming out of this, and I want to go back and watch it. You know, I've seen things on Twitter and stuff. So I'm not going to name any names. But if any of those offensive linemen were not involved in that scuffle, I would have a real problem with that. And I'm
Hmm.
going to ask Leon about that on the fifth quarter coming up here. Like, I know Ingram was involved. Jarian Jones got ejected, so obviously he was involved. Anton Harrison, I know, was definitely involved. Brandon Sheriff was involved. Ezra Cleveland, I saw involved.
Mason Smith got in there.
Mason Smith. Still haven't named a couple of starting offensive linemen that I didn't see out there. I mean, and again, I want to go back and watch before I say anything, but if that's your quarterback that gets hit like that, if you're an offensive lineman, you better get in there with some big elbow smashes, Macho Man Randy Savage style. There's
Yeah.
certain times in an NFL game where it's go time, and that was one of them.
I definitely agree with you where they're like offensive linemen, all 5 of them, even the depth guys, like it's just unsaid pact. I feel like Tony Baselli was saying this on the radio where it's just like an unspoken pact between the offensive line and the quarterback, that the offensive line has the quarterback's back no matter what. And so obviously I agree with you there, but I don't know if I'm really detrimenting any offensive linemen who like weren't brawling, just because I don't know, there was already such a big fight that like I don't think that necessarily all 50 players who dressed for the game for the Jacksonville today necessarily had to get into it. But I definitely see what you're saying. I feel like I was definitely hot up in the press box. Like I had to take a walk and kind of like cool off and just I don't know. It was a very emotional, weird scene that happened today. And so we'll see what happens with Trevor for the rest of the season. Obviously, that's going to be a situation where we'll be monitoring very closely over the next few days. What do you think about the possibility of shutting him down for the rest of the season? And did you think even going into the game that should have been the case, Hacker?
Yeah, I mean, I think he wanted to play. It was obvious he wanted to play. And I also think that he battled. He did everything he could. He didn't play very well. I mean, before he got hurt, he was not playing well.
Yeah,
That
definitely.
that underthrow to Brian Thomas was bad. And I think Brian Thomas, one of the bigger stories that's not going to be talked about, Brian Thomas was visibly frustrated after
Hmm.
that interception because he had Stingley beat. Um, so, in light of Trevor not playing very well, the shoulder's obviously bothering. Now he takes this hit. I think I saw your post that, I mean, it was common knowledge that they were eventually going to get eliminated from the playoffs. I think they're officially now eliminated from the playoffs.
Right.
At this point, what do you really gain by playing Trevor? I don't know. He's going to be your starting quarterback in 2025, right? You don't need to see anything from Trevor Lawrence. So if that injury, if that shoulder's a problem, and if there's any repercussions from this brutal headshot that he took, I'm okay not seeing him the rest of the year at this point.
Yeah, going into this game, I didn't have a problem with him suiting up since, like you said at the beginning, he clearly wanted to play. He's definitely a competitor. So if he wanted to be out there, I wasn't going to be someone who's telling him to back off. But now at this point where they are officially eliminated and he's had multiple injuries both this year and last year, like I get that he wants to play and he's a competitor. And I get that he is still just 25 years old, so he can do some developing on the field, but he can also develop off the field. We've seen some quarterbacks actually develop or benefit from being off the field. Mostly Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson this year were benched for a couple of games and then came back in. And so Trevor certainly isn't going to be benched. It doesn't have anything to do with his play, even if he was rusty to start this game. But just for his own sake and his own health's sake and the health of the franchise long term, I'm definitely at the point where he should just sit the rest of the season out. I think it's probably fair to assume that he's going to miss next week's game because I think that there are cases where players can return the following week from a concussion, but it's a pretty rare circumstance. And with how ugly the hit was today, I think it's pretty safe to assume that he's not going to be playing next week. And then at that point, it would only leave 4 games on Jacksonville's schedule. And so I think he could go ahead and skip those last 4.
The schedule coming up, we talk about being officially eliminated from the playoffs. Boy, Gus, there's some vital games coming up for the Jaguars. I mean, vital. When you talk about draft positioning, my goodness, if you're in Nashville next week, I just don't know if it gets a whole lot better than the 2-10 Jaguars traveling to the 3-9 Tennessee Titans. And with the Jaguars still playing the 2-10 Raiders and the 3-9 Jets, the Jaguars control their own destiny. You lose all those games, you'll have the number 1 pick in the draft, man. And if you win any of those games at this point, that's probably not a good thing. But there is at least some intrigue with the schedule down the stretch here because the Jaguars are playing the other bottom pit teams in the NFL. But I agree. I think at this point you see what Mac Jones has. I mean, Christian Kirk's out, Gabe Davis is out, Trevor's obviously banged up. I don't know. Now, again, the odd thing is Peterson, Taylor, are they coaching for their jobs? We don't have clarity on that. Because Shad Khan has decided not to do anything after the 52-6 fiasco. By the way, now 62 and 145 since the start of 2012. They've officially lost 70% of their games in the last 207 contests. And then Balky extending Walker Little today. Good for Walker Little. He played fine. It's a nice contract for him. I don't care about the money necessarily. I don't care that he's back. That's fine. I'm fine with that. Trent Baalke signing guys to extensions. Is that a guy that thinks he's in trouble in a month? I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fans kind of panicking this morning, seeing that Walker Little was extended and didn't really have anything to do with the player, but just the fact that Trent Baalke was making this contract happen. But I don't think that people need to fret about it. Like, he's still the Jaguars general manager, so it's not like you're just going to stop doing your job because people generally expect you to be fired in a couple of months. And I honestly think the specific move pointed to him kind of recognizing that he is on the hot seat and trying to make a move to kind of prove himself, because Walker Little is a guy that he drafted and came up in the Jaguar system. He's one of a limited amount of homegrown players that the Jaguars have signed to a second contract. So I almost feel like it was Baalke trying to be like, look at this guy that I'm keeping around, as opposed to like, look at me still running the team, if that makes sense.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. My one caveat would be Schefter's tweet. And again,
Hmm.
Schefter might have gotten this from Balky. Who knows? Balky, I think, likes to give those media guys nationally some information. But Schefter basically saying like Balky's business as usual, expecting to be here for the long haul. I'm paraphrasing there, but it was essentially something like that. And that got a lot of reaction from Jaguars on Jaguar Twitter on social media. So I agree with you. I might just be taking care of his guy on his way out the door. I also don't think Jaguar fans have any confidence whatsoever that Shad Khan's going to fire Trent Baalke. And why should they? I mean, he's proven 8 years of Dave Caldwell. I don't think they have any confidence that he's going to, let Baalke go or let Peterson go at this point until he actually does. So it was interesting. And what sucks is, I mean, good for Walker Little. It's a guy that came off an ACL when they drafted him, has been a backup. They obviously like him. They traded Cam. He comes in. I think he's done an adequate job since Cam has been traded. So it should be a good day for Walker Little, but unfortunately, because of the guy that did it and Baalke, obviously that was the main storyline there.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's definitely got to see it to believe it kind of situation. Delphonic commented on YouTube that I stand corrected because the Jaguars actually have not officially been eliminated from the postseason. They've been eliminated from winning their division. So technically, they can sneak in as a wild card team. But if the Broncos win against the Browns tomorrow night, then the Jaguars will be officially eliminated from the playoffs. And so we're pretty much at that point.
I could grow 2 feet in the next 24 hours and become a center in the NBA. I could go to NASA for 7 weeks and then be the next man to walk on the moon. I mean, anything's possible, right?
Incredible physical transformation. So I wouldn't put it past you.
I mean, what are we doing here? They're not going to the playoffs. They are awful. And that, to me, don't even get me started. Because I was going to save this for the fifth quarter, but I'll just give you a little sampling. Coming off the bye, people were like, "Oh, the Jaguars could go 5-1, 6-0, could 2-9, could turn into 7-10." On what planet are you talking about? Have we not seen this team the entire year? And with the best part to me now is, oh, they play the Titans and they play the Jets and they play the Raiders. Tennessee is going to crush this Jaguar team next week. With the way that team's playing, by the way, Tennessee, who just beat Houston last week in Houston, I don't get all the optimism on this team still from the fans that are left. I guess they're clinging to hope. I'm not sure if they win another game this year, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I had a buddy of mine who I went to high school with trying to convince me that the Jags could win out and then like winning the division. Like I was like, you got to stop, man. Hopefully he and everyone else that had a little bit of hope, that's seems officially done now. Hacker, I'll let you go because we've got Tommy on who can break down what he thought about Trevor's injury and the rest of the game. I know you got to get to the fifth quarter with Coach Campo and Leon Searcy. So have a great show. Everyone go check out Hacker and the guys on the fifth quarter on YouTube or 1010 XM 92.5 FM. So thanks for joining, Hack. We will see you after the Titans slaughter the Jaguars per you next week.
Looking forward to that one. That'll be a lot of fun. Talk to you guys on the fifth quarter at 6 o'clock.
They did go 3-and-out, the Jaguars, to begin the first half for sure, and I think the second half too. So the Hacker streak continues.
Of course they did, Gus, because that's what the 2024 Jacksonville Jaguars do. The 3-and-out Jacksonville Jaguars.
That's right. 6 o'clock, fifth quarter. Check them out. Thanks, Hacker. See you next time. All right, now we're going to bring in Tommy McManus, former Jaguars linebacker, host of the Catching Up with Tommy Mac podcast on 1010XL platforms. Tommy, how you doing? I like the sweatshirt.
Yeah, hey Gus. Yeah, I just got it out of the dryer too. I spilled some coffee on it this morning, so it's nice and warm.
Nice.
Yeah, listening to Hack. I mean, listen, there's a lot to unpack there, but I don't think Balky's going anywhere. I think this signing shows. I mean, Shad Khan said that it's the best team ever put together. That came from Balky. That didn't come from Shad. It's not a deal on the way out. It's a deal to say, hey, look, I extended a guy that I drafted, and we like him, and we think he can be this, regardless of what he's done the last 4 years. I'm happy for Walker. I'm happy for any player to get money and get paid. But all that shows me is that we're going to have the same freaking O-line again next year. At least the tackles. Anton's fine. And Walker's fine. but you can't tell me he's not upgradable. He's upgradable. We need a stud left tackle, not an okay left tackle, and maybe sometimes a good left tackle. So that's one thing. The hit on Trevor, I mean, come on, man. You had time to dive right over his head. You led with the forearm. I want to hurt him too now. Don't get me wrong. Not in that situation, but I know he's injured. If I'm the Houston defense, I know Trevor's hurt. I know he's injured. I'm aiming for that shoulder. I want to knock him out of the game. That's part of the game, but you got to do it legally. That was really cheap. I love the fight after. Just absolutely loved it all. I loved what Ingram did. Sheriff, Brian Thomas Jr., others just not taking any grief, sticking up for the QB. Look, as far as the penalty, Ingram deserved the penalty. I mean, it was it was an unsportsmanlike conduct. It's like when a guy hits you first and you whack him back. They throw a penalty. So it's definitely a penalty, but the right thing to do. And you understand that, and hopefully that goes into their thinking when they find him next week, because they'll find Ingram. They're gonna find Shahir. I mean, he's gonna be fined a lot of money. I mean, he may miss some games. He may miss some games, especially the way he acted after. I understand the fight initially, but then to come back, take your helmet off, and what are you gonna do? You're gonna fight the team? You look like such an idiot. And then Sheriff's going after, which I like, and Brian Thomas Jr., but could have got a lot worse. A lot of fights this weekend in football, Gus. They're fighting all over the place. College, pro. It don't matter. You know why? Because November and December football, means something. You're either vying for the playoffs or your season's over. This season's over. Look, I don't know anything, but I'm not going to be surprised if Doug's not fired. Maybe even before the year. I think what this deal with Walker Little shows to me that Balky's going to be here. He's got, Shad believing that he's got the right touch. I don't know. I don't think you make this move, for a player like Walker Little. If you thought he was just dynamite player, you would have signed him a long time ago, and you would have never even kept Cam for another year. You would have left him out because you were so confident in your guy. So this just seems like more of a feather in the cap for Trent to say, well, look, Shad, look at all my draft picks. We'll go through them. I grabbed this guy in the second round, took him a minute to get going, but we like him and we think he can be good. And, we extended him. So that's a positive. That's not a negative, right? At least from a GM standpoint. So, I don't know. It's such, it's so aggravating. And by the way, was there a comeback today? Or was that just garbage time that doesn't count? Because I get confused sometimes. You know what I mean? I mean, am I going to hear this was a one-score game? Because it was, but you never thought we were going to win, did you? Even when we got it down to 3 points, should have been tied. Unfortunate, our kicker. We're not going to bag on the kicker. He's had a great year. Got to make all your kicks, though, Cam. But, it could have been 23-23, and that would have been interesting at the end there. Great play call by them at the end, and a great block by Woods. I mean, I'm a backer, and you don't want to get blocked by a wide receiver, but that was a fantastic block.
Yeah,
great call by them. And Mixon, look, once again, Gus, all year long, can't stop the opposing offense, can't stop them when you need to stop them, can't get off the field, just can't do what you got to do as a defense to help your team out. I saw where Trevor and his wife Marissa they were walking away, outside through the tunnel. Maybe I think Mia had a picture of them.
Okay.
Good to see. It's a violent sport, man. Those things happen, and it shouldn't have happened. It was pretty dirty. I love that we went after him. This team's terrible still. They just are. They're just not any good. And I was one of those that had hope. Okay. And the reason being is because other than Buffalo, the Bears, and Detroit, they could have won some of those games without a doubt. Early on, make a play here, make a play there. Don't forget your coverage here. Don't drop a ball here. Make the right throw. You know what I mean? There's all, things that factored into that. So I thought maybe they'd get it all together. Look, Houston's a good team. They showed a lot of grit on the road. weren't playing that great. Neither quarterback was playing that well, for the record. Even Trevor had a couple things, but he was, I don't know if it was rust, his shoulder, whatever. Stroud wasn't playing well. He came through in the end, but really it was Joe Mixon and that offensive line giving him room to make things happen in the second half. So, I had a good time. The dad bods played at the Duval house prior to the game. We had some people come by and check us out. So
Nice.
that was fun. But yeah, just another disappointing loss. 2-10 is terrible. Draft, whatever. I never care that much about the draft because one guy, maybe depending on a position, maybe, he's going to make that big of a difference. I mean, you could maybe make an argument that Brian Thomas Jr. is the best player in the draft, or at least the first round. Best 5, maybe not best, top 5, right? We're still 2-10. You know what I mean? And what does that mean? Are we not? What if there's a stud left tackle? Are we taking him or no? Not any longer, because now we believe out of nowhere that Walker Little's the stud left tackle who's going to be here for 3 years and start for us all 3 years. You know what I mean? So who knows with the draft? I really wanted them, come away with the win. We all did. I thought maybe they could get on a little bit of run and just finish, strong. But things got to change. I'm just worried now. Like I look 2-10. Yeah, what are they going to do? And Packer's right. Tennessee's defense is going to kick the living, out of us. They are tough, especially against the pass. So I don't know what we're going to do there. But then it's 2-11. You know what I mean? Like, how do you not clean house at 2-11? Unless the GM is got it good with the owner. And he's going to go, the owner's going to go with him and not clean house, So I think that it's more likely he keeps Balky because of this deal done. Why do you need to do it right now? Why?
Just to show, yeah, keeping homegrown players feather in the cap, just like you were saying. I do think that the longer that Peterson is employed by the team, the more likely that it is that they'll end up cleaning house and also letting go of Balky. But I think if what you're saying, if Peterson does get fired before the year ends, then I think that could maybe be a sign of, okay, yeah, it's officially Doug is gone, but Balky is staying. I think that would be a pretty big red flag.
Just don't be surprised because of this is the best talent put forth, because this is what happens now. The GM said, wait a minute, we have the best team ever assembled. I'm not coaching them. If I'm Trent Baalke, that's what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. And Doug may say, well, yeah, I know I'm coaching him, but he's not giving me the players that I need to fit, into my system and flourish in what I do. So the owner's going to be like, well, okay, who do you believe? I think he's going to believe Trent Baalke more than Doug Peterson. And I'm not going to be shocked now that he's going to be here. This deal's kind of weird. It's like, you could be talking to him about it. That's normal. But to make sure it's signed week 11 or 12 or whatever it is, I don't know. Good for Walker and his family. I'm very happy for them. That's a lot of money. And you know what? If they're going to give it to you, you take that money and run. Take it. And look, it's 3 years. He still's got a chance to get another one. And look, I hope he does turn into this stud left tackle, but we haven't seen it. He was okay today. He was fine. There was some good pass rushers, so you got to give him credit there, but until I see that week in and week out, you can depend on him. You know what I mean? Forget it. He's got the guy. I don't got to worry about my blind side anymore. I don't have to chip. I don't have to slide to give him extra help. I don't have to put a tight end there. He's that left tackle because that's what you pay a left tackle to do. Then okay, but you don't see that yet. No way.
I think he summed it up well, where he and a lot of other offensive linemen for the Jaguars are just kind of fine. They're solid and not dependable yet on a consistent level, and they certainly are upgradable. But maybe with a new coaching staff, we'll see a little bit more development. That was something that I talked about with Matt Hayes on our last show. There just seems like there's been minimal improvement on the offensive line under Peterson.
But, it's like, year one, we raved about Rosher. I mean, we raved about him in
I would say so, yeah.
2022. They were good. Last year, they weren't, statistically going into this game, they were okay. I mean, I did a little, look at a team stat review on catching up after the bye week and giving up. I think they gave up 24 sacks, which was 8th overall, right? And then it was the yards per carry had been really good at 4.4, I think 4.3. So statistically, they've done okay this year.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The thing with me and Walker, like, how many times has he had the chance to be the man, but he never won the job, never took it from anybody. It was more like handed to him if someone got hurt or suspended. I mean, he had a chance to be the starting right tackle 2 years ago, a legitimate starting right tackle. And he got beat out by an injured Jawan Taylor, who ended up having a phenomenal year. The year Phil Rosher, like, wow, he developed him.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's funny. This is what happens when you lose. Nobody's good. I mean, you could make a case. Why is the wide receiver coach still here? Why is he still here? With all the drops, today was better. And congrats to Parker Washington. A phenomenal day, young man. He had a great day, and happy to see that. That's good stuff for sure.
Yeah, just last thing on the Walker Little deal. I think the biggest positive you can gain from it is just that from a supply and demand standpoint, there's not a lot of starting caliber left tackles available out there, even in the NFL draft. Just kind of assumption that you'll be able to get one. Okay. And so I see the vision from the standpoint of, like, we have Trevor Lawrence under contract for $275 million. And so we want to make sure we have at least one left tackle under contract going into next year so that you're not just kind of pigeonholing yourself into like one big weakness entering the offseason.
Right. But having a left tackle and having a left tackle you can count on to protect your $275 million franchise quarterback, those are two different things. So, again, I hope it is that he can, but haven't seen it yet. But that, to me, the real reason I bring that up is Balky. This isn't hey, thanks, kid. Gonna just take care on the way out. Like your dad used to give you a few dollar bills on your way out when you're a teenager. You know what I mean? Like, hey,
yeah,
kid, have a good night. No, I don't believe in that. But whatever, we'll see how it plays out. Today, I think the fans enjoyed it. I mean, I wish I actually went. I ended up coming home and watching it with my wife. We've had a whirlwind Thanksgiving, so it's good to just chill. But you saw a great fight. You saw come. I mean, look, they made a game out of it. It was, you could call it garbage. I don't know what you want to call it. Regardless, they made a game out of it. And, I'm not going to give them any credit for one win loss, one score loss again. That's a bunch of garbage, but whatever. The fans saw a good one today, I think.
Yeah.
Aside from their quarterback, being knocked out. I mean, that was scary.
No, but
it
was nice that they were able to stay for the whole game and at least get some entertainment rather than it just being kind of
boring, kind of beat down. Yep.
All right, well, we've got Mia O'Brien joining us now. She was just in the locker room, just hearing from Mac Jones and Doug Peterson's press conferences. Mia, media reactions to the game, what you need
perhaps the biggest takeaway, since I know you guys were just talking about it, credit to Walker Little for not only getting paid this morning, but for sneaking out of the locker room without having to speak to a single reporter. That's a veteran move if I've ever seen one. Not that we were going to pepper him with negative questions, just wanted to ask about the contract and how it came to be. He was able to sneak out, as was Brandon Scherf, which I found fascinating, another veteran move, given, as I know I pointed out on X and so many did, he definitely was the one who heard Azeez Al-Shaair still fighting and being restrained by Joe Mixon in the end zone. And he and Brian Thomas Jr. sought a second confrontation with Shaair after he had been ejected from this game. And so a veteran move by Scherf as well to sneak out and avoid having to answer questions about the melee that ensued here at Everbank Stadium. But no, in terms of coming out of the locker room just now, look, this is a group that, as Dewey Wingard just told me, he still believes is a talented roster. And he still believes in the message that the coaches are preaching. And I asked him point blank, I said, if this exact roster with this coaching staff was to come back, if you run it back in 2025, would it have a different result at the end of the season? And he said he believes so. And of course, he's deflected any answering questions about roster building or coaching or anything like that. But he said, ultimately, I do feel like this is a talented group that they just can't put a finger on where this thing went off the rails. And now here they are out of playoff contention before, well, I guess not before December. It's technically December 1, but in a complete opposite position than they were literally this weekend 1 year ago when they were in the driver's seat for the number 1 seed in the AFC, coming back to host a Monday Night Football game. And yet here they find themselves on the outside looking in.
Yeah, well, Dewey may be, worried with the new coach coming in. He may not be one of his guys, although he has survived a few coaches, which has been very impressive for Wingard, man. But
and he brought that up, Tommy. He brought that up. He said, I hope that these young guys recognize, like I do, that these next 5 games, they're important because you need to put tape out there, whether
Absolutely.
it's for whoever is coaching and leading this team next year or somewhere else. And so he did bring that up. Yes, I do think that is in the back of his mind. But when I asked him in terms of the message being received, he said this is a group that is not splintered. They wouldn't have gotten this far if there was infighting, if there was pointing of fingers. And so it's going to be a fascinating case study at some point down the road in Jaguars history.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Tommy.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead, Gus.
I was just going to shift to Trevor Lawrence. I don't know if you learned any new information from Doug at his presser or if any players had anything interesting to say or if it was like a really somber mood in the locker room or if people kind of knew that he was okay, so it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, it sounded like the locker room. First off, as we were about to go into the locker room, Trevor Lawrence and Marissa Lawrence exited the locker room. And so it does sound like they were able to address the team, or at least Trevor was able to talk with teammates. And so obviously I think that reassured a lot of players that he was okay. I was not in Doug Peterson's press conference just now because I was in the locker room. But per our coworkers and our colleagues at 1010XL, it does sound like Doug said, look, he's obviously in the concussion protocol, but he's going to be okay. I could tell you from some boots on the ground that I talked to that worked with Trevor after he was carted off, while he was carted off, he definitely was feeling the effects of a concussion. From the people that were with him in the second half of that game, they could tell. There was no question. He suffered a concussion. Again, so that's the untrained eye. That's not a medical professional telling me this. But from boots on the ground who were involved in transporting him and getting him into the locker room for initial evaluation after he had been transported from the field, it certainly was a scary scene. They did bring Marissa Lawrence down from the stands immediately. She met them in the locker room. And so, look, I mean, I can't imagine being her 8 months pregnant and having to come down from the stands. And a couple people I talked to, boots on the ground here, they said they were like, she came running down with, someone who escorted her, and they saw her go that way towards the Miller Electric Center. So they weren't sure at that point if they were still in the locker room at Everbank Stadium or if she and their family had driven him to a local hospital. We were assured by Jaguars PR that he was in the building in some regards, but certainly, a scary scene for them, but it sounds like he's going to be okay. But now becomes the $1 million question. You've been eliminated from the postseason. Why would you play him in the remaining 5 games of the season? And I think that's a tough pill to swallow. But look, this group credited, in speaking with Mitch Morse just now, they credited Mac Jones for calming the operation down in light of one of the biggest fracases I've seen in covering the National Football League in 7 years. Tommy, you've been around it a lot longer than me, and I'm sure you would echo it. This was one of the bigger fights I've seen. And they said that Mac Jones guiding the team, if only for 3 points down the field in the initial aftermath after Trevor Lawrence went down, was so critical to the team's ability to be competitive down the stretch.
Yeah, no doubt. You got to credit Mac. He was, man. He calmed them all down. He made some good plays. It looked like they, moved the ball down the field a little bit. Couple great scores. Getting them back in it. That's what he's here for, right? No, nobody thought there'd be a vicious hit like that to their starting quarterback, but that's what he's here for. Look, Trevor, when the arm went up, you knew right away, like there's something not right. That's not a normal thing. I'm glad to see he's okay. I'd shut him. I mean, look, you know what? Get the shoulder fixed, shut him down, forget about it. You know what I mean? I don't know. I know he may want to play. You probably want him out there, just to have him out there towards the end of the year. And I was all for him playing. And again, it's not getting hit in the pocket. It's trying to make him play. He did the right thing. And the player, took a cheap shot on him. It's unfortunate. It happened. It happens. It was very violent. I like the fight. I like the fight like that. I like it just because it shows fight and I always thought they backed him. I never questioned that at all. I think they all like Trevor Lawrence, but I just like the initial, hey man, I don't care who you do that to. You ain't doing it to my teammate. And it's rock and roll time. And you know what? It could have been a lot worse. So I credit whoever calmed them all down eventually. I know at the end there, Shahir, I mean, that's ridiculous, taking your helmet. You fight the whole team. Come on, just get out of here. It's over. That's not going to be good for him when he's pleading his case to the NFL. They'll fine him $100,000 because he's looking at a big fine for that thing. But yeah, I got to credit Mac and doing, playing some good ball. Unfortunately, our defense once again lets us down. Can't get off the field when they have to. Can't stop the run. Credit Mixon and company for that second half. But he's a tough running back. We shut him down early, but they kept coming after us, and we couldn't stop them. So, here we are, another loss, a close loss, but that's 10 of them. So not good.
Yeah, Hacker and I agreed earlier that we're definitely on the boat of Trevor should be shut down for the season, especially assuming he's not going to play next week. And so at that point, you only have 4 games left, and you're going to be mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. And so there's no need to put him back out there when he has had multiple injuries both this season and last season.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Tommy this earlier, so I'll just ask both of you guys now, starting with Tommy, especially as a former player. Just what emotions were running through your head at about 2:02 this afternoon when Trevor Lawrence was hit? Were you just feeling sorry and sad for him? Were you just
no? Go get the guy that did it right away. Go get the guy that did it and make him pay. And that's what Ingram did. And like I said earlier, it is a penalty. People are like, how can you throw penalties defending? It's still a penalty, but it's the right thing to do, right? That's what you want. I know as a coach, as a teammate, I mean, you don't hit the quarterback, especially your quarterback. You can't hit a quarterback like that in that kind of cheap way. So, no, the first emotion is let's go get the guy. Once that's settled down, is Trevor okay? I mean, obviously you're thinking about it while you're going at it, but
right.
Look, I thought it showed a lot of togetherness. It showed a lot of frustration. They got to be frustrated. Come on, they're 2-9, 2-10. You know what I mean? Like that just boiled it all over. But I like the fight. I like the bye, honey. I like the fight. Just for the mere fact that it showed, some fire and some they finally snapped. I wish they would play like that all year long without needing, that big hit. But nonetheless, no, and now that he's okay, the thing with concussions, we most of us have had them. So what it feels like. I mean, when you get a real concussion, and I don't mean a ding or maybe you have a headache, a real, like you've almost been knocked out or been knocked out, you're very weak. You're very tired. Your head feels just like your brain just feels like you just want to shut it down and close your eyes. And that's why they check on you during your first night's sleep, to make sure you don't go into any kind of coma or anything like that. They literally wake you up and like, are you okay? Are you okay? And then you're like, quit waking me up. I'm trying to sleep. But that's the deal. But you know exactly when you have a real concussion, you know exactly what it feels like, and it's not a good feeling. But you also know you can recover from it. We've seen it. Tua is a great example, but good. They feel better about him now, that's for sure. And you know what? When he finds out who all did what they did for him, Trevor's gonna love his teammates even more because there's nothing better than knowing that someone's there to stick up for you in your dire time of need. And man, that was a dire time of need, no doubt.
Yeah, I told you in the press box, I've never bought cigarettes before, but I felt like I had to go out and buy a whole box of them and smoke them when I have. And I was just so stunned. I don't know. It was a weird feeling for me because I don't have any children, not yet, but it felt like I was watching my child get hurt. And so I was a little bit all over the place, to be honest.
Yeah.
What are you feeling?
Yeah, I think to Tommy's point, it's awful that, I had so many people text me as soon as it happened. And once it all but was assessed that it was a concussion, I felt awful that my reaction was, well, at least it's only just a concussion. It's not like his shoulder got separated, that he's got a dislocation or internal bleeding or something like that. Because a concussion is still awful. I've never experienced it to the point that Tommy just described, which it's fascinating. Thank you, Tommy, for that insight. That's part of why we love having you on Duval Rundown, because this is insight you can't get anywhere else. I will tell you, I've only had one diagnosed concussion in my life. It's pretty notorious in that during a primetime Iowa State-Oklahoma football game, I collided with a wide receiver by the name of Alan Lazard. And I actually suffered the concussion not because of Allen, but because the camera I had on my shoulder actually ricocheted behind me and it hit me in the back of the head. And that's why you see so many concussions that are when the player's head slams on the back of the ground, not just the frontal when you can see the impact coming. But with that said, I did play goalie, if only, through high school, but in soccer and lacrosse.
Yeah.
And that's what I was telling somebody here earlier. I know I inevitably have suffered multiple concussions in my life, but that was the only diagnosed one. And to Tommy's point, you want to go to sleep. That is what it looked like when I just saw Trevor Lawrence briefly as he and Marissa walked out of the locker room. He looked like he needed a rest. And yeah, I think for me, it was the initial shock of trying to process not just what happened to Trevor, but that there now was this melee on the field and trying to process who was going after who and who hit who, and just trying to process all that in your mind is really difficult. And so that's why I don't fault the players who didn't immediately get into the fray because they weren't right there, right? Like, I'm not going to fault somebody who's on the other side of the field or is standing right here and the fray's going on over there and they don't jump right in. Like, they run over, but they're standing there because you're just trying to process all of this in real time like we were. And so I think that those who are criticizing, I saw a couple people criticizing Walker Little. Like, he's not over there. He's a left tackle. He's on that side of the field. Anton Harrison, your right tackle, was the first person to jump on him. And so, look, I'm not going to fault somebody who's on that side of the field for not getting there first, because at that point, by the time he got there, there's about 40 people. So I think that that's important to note. But ultimately, I look at this situation, and as unfortunate as it is, not just for Trevor Lawrence and his health, but for the sake of this team and a potential turnaround here in the second half of the season, I've been saying it, Gus, now for 2 weeks. The Jaguars need to approach this the same way the Los Angeles Chargers did last year, where Justin Herbert did come back from an initial setback and initial injury, only to suffer a second one. And ultimately, they had to make the decision to shut him down because they knew where that thing was headed. They lost a lot of one-score games. To their credit, and this is where I'm fascinated to see which direction the Jacksonville Jaguars move in. They knew they were firing Brandon Staley. They probably wanted to wait, just like they did with GM Tom Telesco, until the end of the season. Unfortunately, a series of unfortunate events in Las Vegas, Nevada last December prevented them from doing so, and he was fired mid-season in mid-December. But that was a roster that was immensely talented and significantly underperformed and lost a ton of one-score ball games. What did they do this offseason? They cleaned house on the personnel and coaching side, yes. They created that new identity under Jim Harbaugh, but they were able to manage the salary cap and keep what they believe was one of the greatest rosters in Chargers history. They were able to keep that group intact with new coaching, with a new strength and conditioning staff, and a new attitude. And now you look at them on the verge of a postseason berth. I believe the Jacksonville Jaguars could make a similar move. Now it's just a matter of what off-season moves they will make to create that new identity.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting end of the year, no doubt about it. And I got to wrap it up. I was just going to add, that hit on Trev, I'm not going to be shocked if that shoulder isn't, pretty hurt too, because that was a big hit on the tire, not just the head. He got whacked in the shoulder pretty good, so hopefully that's not an issue. But yeah, look, all we could do as fans and covering a team is, look, you want to see guys fighting for their football lives because they're going to have to, like you said earlier, you got 5 games to go. You're fighting for, your career. You're fighting for, if you're going to be a starter or not. So those things are all important. The owner's got to do something. It's just terrible and it's not acceptable. And the way we finished a year ago and now this year with all these expectations, you got to do something. What is that? I don't know. And as I go, Mia, what do you think? I feel like the Walker Little contract gives Balky. I don't think Balky's going anywhere. I don't think you make that deal if you're out the door. There's no like I was saying to Gus. There's no like, here you go, pal. Here you go. Have a $26 million deal. I'm leaving, but you stay and collect that money. I think this shows that he's more in control of this team, and I think will be moving forward. I don't know if I want him to be, but I think he might be.
I disagree, Tommy. I think, quite frankly, and this is nothing against your opinion because it's the same opinion I know a lot of our colleagues share. I think that's a bit reactionary just to this Adam Schefter assessment of the situation. A couple of things. Number one, Trent Baalke has historically said he does not make in-season moves. He has made an in-season move. What does that say about where his standing is here with this franchise? So that's number one. Number two, I think it's important to note that this is not only a team-friendly deal, but this is a deal that's akin to what Ezra Cleveland got last March. I think that this is a deal that even if a new GM was to start here tomorrow, I think he would give Walker Little the same deal because you're not going to roll into the 2025 offseason program in the NFL draft with no left tackle, one true starting tackle in Anton Harrison under contract, all but show your hand of where you're going to go in the NFL draft and or just sign whoever the highest priced free agent tackle is, because at that point it's probably Walker anyways, who's on the open market and available. And so that's where, for me, I look at this as Shad Khan is paying people to work. I have multiple sources and friends text me and say, there's a lot of people in America who are getting paid not to work right now. And they're not wrong. But ultimately, if you want to talk about culture, the culture that Shad Khan has created in all of his various entities is that you work until I tell you not to work. And I think that's what Trent Baalke's doing. I do think it's interesting that he said he would never do in-season contracts, and here he is handing one out. So that speaks more to a Hail Mary than it does, he has total control of the situation. I think it's just showing Shad that, hey, look, I'm still here. I'm still doing deals. But ultimately, I'm not sure that goodwill will actually result in him keeping his job.
Yeah, we'll see, man. I don't know. I don't know. From my experience, I don't think you'd do that deal. He's an average player. Why are you paying him? I mean, I know it's friendly and all that, but if he was your left tackle, he would have been your left tackle years ago. I think he's just by default the left tackle. Maybe you go in, but what happened to Anton playing left? I thought he's going to be maybe.
Well, even if Anton plays left for you, then you're showing your hand that you've got to go draft a right tackle or you got to go sign a right tackle in free agency. You just can't do that in terms of gamesmanship and roster construction.
Yeah, well, we'll see. That's a good opinion, though, Mia. I appreciate it. We'll see how it ends. You know, there's going to be changes. There's got to be changes. I think at 2-10, the coach, I don't know how the coach stays. It's just going to be tough. All right, guys, thanks so much. Go Jags, even though you stink. Go Jags anyway.
I just want to have one more note. I want to shout out Evan Engram, not just for his retaliation after the Trevor hit, but he also made NFL history today. He became the third tight end ever to have 40-plus catches in each of his first 8 NFL seasons. And so because this is my week, or my cleats, my charity week.
My cause, my cleats, yeah.
Thank you. Engram supports the North Florida School of Special Education, and I would recommend, if you're in the holiday spirit, even despite today's ugly events, to go check out Engram's charity and other charities from Jaguars players. But that's all that we've got for today. Appreciate everyone joining us after Jacksonville's Week 13 loss to the Houston Texans. We'll be back each Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday after Jaguars games. So thanks again. Catch you next time.
Bye.